So
I learned a lot, but what he said initially that since they renovated the museum, they left out the White Terror part. Since the KMT came back to power. And so it's really concentrated on the events that happened on February 28th, 1947. And before it used to go all the way up to the 80s, showing this whole continuum of the problems of the authority under martial law. It's somewhere else. Yeah. Not there. And what I learned this time, because I went for the opening when this museum opened, and it was in the radio station, a 1930s Japanese building in the design of the Mediterranean, Spanish, Moroccan, with Art Deco features, very much like a building that you find in Southern California from that period. It was an international trend to make neo-Mediterranean style buildings in the colonial world. So there was this governor of Taiwan appointed who was listening to the complaints of the Taiwanese, who made a civil assembly for understanding what happened and for furthering the responsibility for self-governance in Taiwan. And the governor, he listened patiently, carefully, agreeing with all of their requests for the first 5 days. But meanwhile, he was sending what is called the secret telegram to Chiang Kai-shek, who then sent troop reinforcements, unknown to the Taiwanese, who thought they were making headway in terms of their self-governance. And when the troops arrived in Geelong, without any warning, they just started firing from the ships, their machine guns, and jumped on shore, and then took all the dock workers, wrapped them in barbed wire, threw them into the harbor, and then shot anyone who happened to be on the street. And if you were asked, "Who are you?" and you could not answer in perfect Mandarin, you were shot. And then they went all the way across Taiwan, heading south, and then another army moving up from Kaohsiung, and simply killing any people that they met on the way. It was a complete crackdown of between 10,000 to 30,000 innocent people, and they have no accurate figures of how many people perished in a very short time, just coming to simply execute anyone who would possibly, and especially those people who were in these peaceful assemblies, the elites of Taiwan, addressing the problem in a civil manner. And there was one vignette of a person who came from Taiwan. He studied art in Paris. He did Impressionist art. And then he thought, oh, China is probably going to be the future, and went to China to learn Mandarin for 3 years. And he came back, and then he was a magistrate for Chiayi at this time. And when the troops arrived, they simply took everyone out of the office of administration in Chiayi, and they put them in a cart, as they did in the Qing dynasty when they were going to execute people. And in the cart, they were paraded around the city, back to their government office, and all shot on the spot. And the wife of this one man, who happened to be the artist, she took him home and hired a photographer to take his picture in full suit, and as he would go to the office, like an ordinary day going to the office, pulled out and shot like that. And everyone looks so innocent, yet they were shot and killed. And of course, as I mentioned, when I went to take the indigenous people in Taiwan to perform in Belarus, also I learned a similar story there when the wartime Nazi Germans arrived. They wanted to pull out people from their houses and either shot them or put them back in their house made of wood and lit the house on fire with the whole family inside, and eliminated between a third to half the population of Belarus, just the army going through on its way to Russia. And it's, when you hear these stories, how soldiers or people have been motivated, ordinary people in uniform motivated to do atrocities. And it's beyond my human scope of imagination to fathom how this could possibly happen, people to people. And so it's really, but the troops were told they were given orders that there was this rebellion of all the Taiwanese. And since they had been under Japanese occupation, they were really Chinese, and therefore they should be shot to prepare the land for the Chinese.
So this was soon after the KMT?
This was in 1947, and when the KMT troops arrived initially in 1945 for the liberation, and the people thought, oh, these are brethren from China, now we are coming back to our people. And within a year and a half, this happened. This incident happened, and the Taiwanese had to endure under martial law for 38 years afterwards, and the whole thing, the government of the ROC came with its too many people. And all of that, under the white terror ensued. So what I learned actually, and what they have placed in this museum, what Chen Shui-bian was able to get, is actually the document, the handwritten reply letter from Chiang Kai-shek with his signature to say to the governor, don't worry, I'm sending the troops. And that's in the museum. And then actually, when I think about it, all this, understanding about this is under the label of KMT, but actually it's just two men, the governor and the supreme commander in China. These two guys concentrated their efforts to make this thing happen. It's not the whole party of the KMT or the ROC government. And these troops actually were feeling, as they could not win against Japan in the Second World War, or even against the communists when they were fighting in China. And here they could easily win in their battles. Of course, there wasn't any opposing army, but they were given a free hand to do so. But the Taiwanese actually did try, the students especially, from National Taiwan University and from the schools throughout Taiwan, the students in their 20s, they put up great resistance. And finally, they were all down into Fuli, the very center of Taiwan, and then being surrounded by the Chinese troops, and they decided to not fight to the last man, but then disperse. And some got out, some escaped, some went to the mountains, some went abroad, and like that. Yes?
You mentioned when we were over there that a part of Taipei was a military base area that was closed off to everybody else, that they had a lot of executions there?
So in Taipei there is a road called Jilong Lu. And on the east side, it was initially called the MacArthur Highway. And there was a wall And the wall is now where you have, actually facing the wall, right along Chilongmu, you have what is called now the Xinyi District. And the Grand Hyatt, the City Hall, Taipei 101, the Warner Village, all of that is in the area that was once the munitions depot fort, off limits, and most people in Taipei, they have blocked it out of their memory because they never knew what was on the other side of that wall. And they kept all the weapons that they were planning to use when reclaiming the mainland. So the whole thing was a big stockpile of weapons and army personnel camped there. So after the lifting of martial law, of course, and by the 90s, when it wasn't seemed feasible that the army of the ROC is actually going to reclaim, they had all the airplanes still operating from the 1940s to put everyone back on board and fly to the mainland and all that, up through the 90s. So when it was considered that actually this is not going to happen, they retired the planes and took down the wall and cleared out the fort. But what is said is, of course, still the remains of the bodies of the people who were executed under martial law were dumped there. And that was the parade field where bodies were buried on the other side of that wall. And when I first came to live in Taipei, there was a secret narrow gauge railroad that went up from the munitions. I would go at midnight to see the door open, and the little railroad would come out all heavily guarded and then secretly go through the city up to the Songshan Airport, where they would deliver the weapons to the planes. It was a kind of fantasy to see that. Most people were asleep at that time and they were not concerned. Or they thought something was going on, but they're not going to venture out at night. So you shouldn't be out after 10 p.m. under martial law. Yeah.
Isn't it bad feng shui to build on mass graves? I mean, considering it's superstitious.
So that whole area, that garden area just in front of City Hall, that is the location. It's still open. There's still something there.
Wouldn't they have likely had to dig most of that stuff out just because those buildings there are pretty tall and parking decks? They would have had to dig too deep. You know, they would have had to dig below the level of what they buried. I doubt.
No, I'm saying that area in front of City Hall, that is the old parade ground of the sport. It's still open space there.
Right. But isn't there a parking deck under there now?
There's parking and it's, and of course it was embarrassing, and still part of the fort is there, and that was going to also be torn down, but there was a foreign worker in one of those buildings, and he could see these old gray buildings of the old fort, dormitory for the soldiers, and he did everything possible to save them, and some of the buildings have been saved in the park.
Is that the military thing?
Yeah, it's called what's 4x4 military park or something, and still the old buildings. That was saved by the efforts of one guy. So actually, it's individuals make decisions that can affect and influence many thousands or millions of people, and you cannot blame the whole party or all of the, all of the Chinese or all of the, the people who are affiliated with that, command. It's only those individuals actually who did the atrocities. Yeah.
It's not related to Taipei City Hall. but it is related to graves. I've heard that the hills around Utah are actually full of like soldiers' graves, which is why it was really hard to sell like real estate on there instead of like using them. Like, is that true? I'm just curious, like where
Well, this is
this is different, right?
not only a grave question, but also the feng shui question.
Yeah.
So when you build a secular dwelling on the flat, as people have done in Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, they're not building on the hillsides. And only the foreign people were settling in a place like Tiamu and Yangmingshan. And then it became, because of this foreign aesthetic, that you have a room with a view. You know, you build on the hills, like in Beverly Hills. Right? So then more and more people decided, oh, it's cool to have your apartment. And also, this was discovered in Hong Kong about feng shui. You built on the hills, and if you manage the feng shui, actually it could benefit you. But in terms of Taiwan, geomancy, you have mostly, and especially in the hills in Busan that are facing to the east, graves. So what looks like a big housing estate from that side, it's all the people, mainland people, and many Islamic people who came from China in the 1940s and 50s, and when they needed a cemetery, and they didn't have a local cemetery, or they did not even have a locality of their origin for their burial, because they came from China, they went on that hillside. So you have all these mainland, foreign, Chinese, Islamic, and other kinds of Christian, Buddhist, whatever religion the people were adhering to from China up on that hill. And I'm trying to get up there sometime. I used to go with my students, and it's a great ethnographic experience to see all of these different styles from China of graves, and they're built in a grand manner. And they're all just sitting up there, but and there are roads that go up there, and you can see from this window, you can see the roads, and they all are beautifully lit at night, and you can go up there and no traffic, of course, because through a graveyard. It's not where anyone is thinking to commute to. It's only, the roads are only there to visit the graves. So there's a lot of rich, not only to museums, but in the society around in Taipei to visit very interesting and old places everywhere that are neglected. With lifting of martial law, all these areas that were military off-limit places that were very scary to pass even, because they had all these guards and tanks and jeeps that would, they would hop in and try to catch you if you went too close. Now they're just open parks and eco zones and biodiversity, and you can go on these nature trails and find these tunnels and where munitions were held, and the tunnels went through the hills. So if there was an invasion from one side, they would tunnel out into the other side, and they could bring vehicles to the tunnels and their missiles, and then launch a counterattack from the other side. And the whole Taipei Basin was configured as a military strategic defense under martial law. Now, if the people in Taiwan did not at first welcome the ROC government as it was allied with the Americans, and said from day one, we don't want to be, let's say, part of the ROC, we want to be now, since we're at the end of the war, in independent Taiwan, and appeal to the Americans, for example, and all the Taiwanese gathered together to say, now we have the strength to do so, because Japan has surrendered, and it's just us. And there was a time when there was just Taiwanese people, up through 1947. But because of this incident that occurred, and there wasn't enough military control of Taiwan, there could be a rebellion, but it wasn't organized. So because the woman who was selling the contraband cigarettes under the bridge, and she got her little box of cigarettes up, confiscated by the Tobacco Wine Monopoly Bureau people, who went actually to Danshui to find out how these cigarettes were being illegally transmitted from Danshui to Taipei, and they could not find anything there, so they picked on this lady when they got back to show something that they had accomplished their work or something. At least they got that, because they didn't find anything in Danshui. And accidentally shot some guy, and then the Taiwanese went to this tobacco monopoly building and set it on fire, and they marched peacefully to the governor's place to have the petition, and they were all in actually traditional dress and tongs, like in a parade, and went there to petition to the governor, thinking the governor was going to be more understanding to them. And what happened is that the governor simply ordered the troops in his building to shoot anyone that was standing in front of the building on the spot, and just shot the people coming in peacefully. Yeah, hi.
When did the meetings happen there? Because there were meetings between some of the upper class and the government.
That's right.
That went on for many days. So how did those happen?
They went to the Yunshan. It's a congressional hall building that's in Taipei. That's near the West Gate. And that's where they met. And they were there having these meetings peacefully and every day up through March 8th. And on March 8th, the ships arrived from China with all the troops. And not to be announced to the delegates. And once the troops arrived, and anyone who was in the petitioning of the reform, they were rounded up. And that was the end of their that was pro-democracy movement that just lasted between the February 28th to March 8th. Of course, there were so many people killed that they had to lift the martial law because they couldn't just do any more damage. They had just killed so many people. And then martial law came back again in 1949 when the whole government of China elected. And that's the time from 1949 to 87 that we have the whole period of unbroken martial law.
Our group topic is Taiwan as a new settlement and small village, Dujia. Okay, Dujia is our key word. Dujia with people having the same surname. And why we select this topic? Because research motivation and purpose. And we have to know that Dujia village is inhabited with the few population and is located in a remote rural area. And in this village, most villagers have the blood relationship. And nowadays, the village still remains many traditional customs related to the same sanguinity. Okay, sanguinity of these villagers.
What is sanguinity?
Sanguinity means the 血缘. No.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
血缘.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second, by collecting historical documents and conducting field work, and we researchers hope more people will have the opportunity to appreciate the traditions and developments of this village. Okay, now it's the introduction. 杜家 Dujia village is attached to the Qigu township, and it is located to the southwest of Taiwan, Tainan County. According to the statistics in October 2011, the village has a population of 1,060, and the geography position of this village is remote, so that it has either the convenience of the transportation and the progress of the modern development as well. And the last, in this village, up to 95% of the Chou clan making up the village is still very rare in Taiwan. Okay, now we can see the Taiwan map, right? And you guys see the little red circles? Yep. And it's the Tainan City and Tainan County have been merged since the December 25, 2010. Okay, thus nowadays the village is officially located in Tainan City. Tainan City.
A village in Tainan City.
Yeah.
In the past, it was in the Tainan County, but since Tainan County,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and there are 13 townships in this Tainan County, and we can see the little red circles. It's the Dujia village is located in the Qigu County. Yeah, it's the middle of the Tainan County.
And Qigu district.
Yeah. Okay, and this is the central line image.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is the central line image of the Dujia village. And we can see the Dujia village, and their person always to do the main traffic road is the coastal road line 17th. And they always to buy the normal living toward the Jiali township. Did you see that? It's a neighborhood. Jiali, because it's the prosperous. Yeah, prosperous here. Yeah. It's very interesting. Okay, now I'll tell you the region. In Qing Dynasty, okay, it has two main policies related to the governance of Taiwan. And the first policy was to restrict the qualification and number of migrants who were allowed to cross the Taiwan Strait and settle down in Taiwan. And the other policy was to restrict Han Chinese from entering the mountain area, which was mainly settled by Taiwanese aborigines. And this policy was to prevent conflict between the two groups of the settlers. Okay, and we have to know the restrictions on mainland Chinese migrating to Taiwan stipulated that no family members could accompany the migrants, and therefore most migrants were mostly single men or married men with his remaining on mainland China. It's very interesting stipulation. So accordingly, there was a saying there were Tangshan, and means the Chinese men, but no Tangshan women. Okay, it's very interesting situation. And due to the relation of the coast in Taijiang area, during the Qing Dynasty, people from many areas came to reclaim the land and settle down. And in the course of exploitation of the hands, the squatters with the same surname make up the tendency to live in a compact community. Okay, and during the period of the Emperor Qianlong in Qing Dynasty, the primitive ancestor of the 度假 village and
秋千
okay, 秋千城 and this man came to Taiwan from Fujian province of China. First, he landed on 周载伟 and its landmark Yongkang, okay, and then he settled down at Dujia. And there are different interpretations of their ancestors' origin, as whether they came from Pingpu, people of Jiali township, or were the descendant of Qiu Qiancheng from Fujian province. Okay, the next. Okay, it is said that in the beginning of Qing Dynasty, Xiaolong, a Pingpu people of Syria, okay, lived in a compact community which was located in Jiali township, the neighborhood of the Dujiang village, and the people was called Miao yeah. And in the end of the period of Emperor Jiaqing in Qing Dynasty, the junior clansmen reported to the official due to the immoral custom of the bride's first line privilege. Okay. With official attacks in the dark, the casualties were serious, and one of the people fled to the west and took refuge in Zhuojia and changed his surname as Qiu. Okay, some people believe that this man was the primitive ancestor of the Dujia villages, Qiu Qiancheng, this name. And furthermore, a scholar named Wang Shoushi once found the clay pot worship in the Dujia village. So he inferred that the villages of the Dujia were of Pingpu people, and villagers stopped worshipping the clay pot and denied the faith on clay pot worship because they wanted to erase the dishonorable historical period of the Miao Hozhou. Okay. Despite the rumor, most villagers believe that they are the offspring of Qiu Qiancheng. And in recent years, some of its inhabitants have started a movement to rectify the rumor about the origin of its ancestors. Because of the rectifying movement, its inhabitants have gathered together and started to concern about its public issues. Okay. In the view of the social system and marriage system of Syria, the Pingpu people is of matriarchal society. When a couple got married and the husband would live with his wife's family, thus the unique wedding custom of the Miao Hozhou was doubtful. And villagers of the Dujia village once went to the mainland China to look for the ancestral origin. And furthermore, another village, Chogo, added the family tree to clarify the origin of the Chou clan. And some senior clanmen also clarified that there was no clay pot worship in Duji village. And with the actions of collecting its historical materials, the villagers established a workshop to exhibit the literature and history as well as revise the family tree. Okay, now we can see these two pictures. And these two pictures is the main entrance of Dujia village, like the temple door. Okay. Now we can see it's very interesting. See, the same little razor code. It's the sense map. Dujia was still in the ocean. It haven't flew up. Okay. Then it's the Taiwan castle map in Mingzhi 37 year. The sense map Dujia was formed. Okay. It's the pedigree of Dujia village was edited in 1960 and 1936 during the Japanese colonial period. Okay, and these two pictures, the left picture is the preface of the pedigree, and the right picture means the family tree. Yeah, the primitive generation. Yeah. Okay, I'll ask Dargo to be continued to introduce the future of the Dujia village.
Hi guys. Well, this is feature one, an only surname village based on blood relationship. So Dujia village has had such customs. So this one custom is that they don't allow their daughters to marry men who could live with her family and bear her family name. It's derived from ancient Chinese tradition, and so the family would not adopt a son-in-law, assuming that this row of son with a surname other than Cho wouldn't be so good, and even the widow should marry the man with the surname of Cho, in case of duty family. Also, if the family haven't a boy, they only can adopt a child from other families with this surname, Cho's surname. And as James said, only 95%. Up to 95% of the Cho clan make up this village, so it's still very rare in Taiwan. And most residents in the village have the same ancients. So it is, we can see the village with only one village of community with only one surname. Well, they say the reason why people with other names have not resided in this village was because of, let's say, a rumor that people bearing other surnames would not live in this village peacefully. So outsiders, subsequently they moved out of this village. And this rumor also, and because of this rumor, other people didn't want to move into this village. So also, we can see this feature in the strong cohesion of the villagers. So, they didn't exclude outsiders from their community, but this strong cohesion of the villagers made the outsiders move out. And also we can say, we should say about the land. The land belonged to the village's public property, and outsiders, they couldn't get the real estate. So it was also the reason of the next feature. It's about the way of living. The Chou ancestors, they had vast farmland, and they established the villages, the community's business, and approximately about 90% of the villagers, they had the business of breeding milkfish. So up until now, they have been engaged in this fish farming. It's mainly because of the local topography. So you can see they have built fish ponds near the village. But recently they changed, let's say, their productions. Instead of breeding milkfish, they've been raising female mullets. And the whole area breeding female mullets, it's about 150 hectares, and it is one of the largest area for raising such female mullets in Taiwan. So its annual value about over 100 million NT dollars. So this business has many profits, and so people. So it gave people better possibility to have better economic standing. Also parts of the fish farms, which I mentioned, they are leased, and the rental also belongs to the public property, and the fund is used to pay expenses such as ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, other administrative expenditures, property taxes. So we can see on this picture, it's fishing utensils. They were used around 1951 to 1961, and it's famous. Yeah, all of you have seen this straw rain cape. It's a fish, yeah. It's not haircut. And we can see, it was in the past how they caught the fish. Yeah, just they wore just one-piece skirt, and now, the outfit has changed. They have raincoats and boots. Well, this is mullets.
But why only female mullet?
Because let's say it has more profits.
Only female mullet has the row, so.
Yeah. So you can see, this day taking out the mullet.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is the finished product of molecule. So they also call this black gold. I don't know.
It's usually made into a delicate dish in Chinese.
I forgot the Chinese name.
Yeah.
Okay, so and the next part, Eric will present next part.
Okay, let me introduce the picture 3 to picture 6 of Dujia village. Because there are too many words, and it's very boring, and I think you will be fall asleep easily. So we look at the picture directly. And the number of houses with the Yitiaolong architecture was larger because it cost less and was effort saving. We call it Sandeyuan, and a U-shaped house with a country in the middle. And this traditional house had lots of windproof design and trees to prevent harsh wind in the winters. And the second is we call it Yitiaolong house, developed in central building with single wing. We also call it as Hulong, attached vertical to either side. And you can see in front of the courtyard, it provides a space for carrying out household chores outside and several adjoining space. Okay. And another interesting is due to the good public security, the door and the window were not equipped with locks because it's peace and peaceful over there in the past, but now it's totally different. And you can see the roof and the wall were decorated with colorful figures. And here I would like to see. In front of the door, you can see a door seal, which must be stepped over. And this is the window. It looks like a bamboo. Bamboo is implying in Chinese like a prosperity. Okay, too many. And this is the picture of the gentry of Dujia village in the Japanese colonial period. If you are hungry, we have many food here. And it is the winter solstice in Dujia village. The activity has turned out to be a model to be followed and well known for a long time. Okay. At last, I will introduce our member, whose name is Chiu. He is the member of Dujia village. His name is Claire Chiu. So, okay, it's your turn.
So first I want to make more introduction about this photo. You can see during in the ceremony, only the male villagers, they worship the ancestors in the ceremony. It's according to the Chinese tradition. Only the male can attend the important rituals. Yeah. Okay, then I'll introduce about the temple. Okay, I'll make the words shorter. Yeah. In the village, the religion are many of Taoism. In early time, the elderly clansmen would take turns bring the ancestors' tablets home for worship every year. and their main worship deities is martial Xiefu, and he will be also worshipped by someone chosen by casting the divine blocks. Just we see the movies last week, yeah, about the divine blocks. And after some clansmen suggested building a temple, then the village had a fixed place for worship. And then you can see it's a photo about this temple, and the temple is called Wenheng Dian. In English is Wenheng Temple, and in the Dujia's main entrance you can also see the tablets of Wenheng Temple on the upper side of the main entrance. And the villagers usually have the many important activities just in front of the temple, including the winter solstice. We also have a lunch party just in front of this temple, and it's the roof of this temple is also many colorful deities and decorations. And this picture is about the entrance of this temple, and the right side is the main hall. Okay. And the right side of these deities is the main worship deity in this village is called martial Xiefu. Yeah. And the two small deities beside him is his like bodyguard. Yeah. And on the left side is the corridor to the back hall, and you can see this. You may see it in many temples. It's like lottery. You can pick, just one lottery, and then you can know your future fortune. Yeah. And the right picture is about the deity of Hua Tuo. Yeah, you may know it's the ancient medical scientist. And then I'll introduce about the village's ancestral hall. It's called Long Tian Shrine. In the ancestral hall, only the first generation to sixth generation descendants plus clansmen over 100 years old can be granted for being the objects of worship in the hall. Up to now, there are still around 50 to 60 people of the sixth generation descendants alive. At first, the villagers think if the seventh generation descendants could be the objects of worship, it would result in the situation that the senior clansmen had to worship the inferior generation. But with another sensible consideration, people, even they are above seventh generation, they can, if their age are over 100 years old, they can also be granted for being worshipped. And then the left side is the photo about the ancestral hall, and you can see the tablets. It's in Chinese Henan, and it means the chose. This village, our primitive ancestors was from Henan, earlier than Fujian province. Yeah, and that's the tablet of this whole Long Tian Zitang. Yeah. Yeah, it's the inside look of this shrine. And here you can see the ancestors' tablets. It's decorated splendidly. Yeah. Okay, last, I will introduce about the cemetery in this village. The primitive ancestors' cemetery. The primitive ancestor is the Qiu Qianceng. Its cemetery is not located in the village, but it's on the way to the neighborhood Jiali Township. And okay, I'll show you. you can see, let's say it's the primitive ancestors cemetery. It's just a mound without a tombstone. And the reason is that because in the Japanese colonial period, the Japanese demand the villagers to remove the ancestors' tomb out of this place, and so the villagers, they just try to level the tomb to pretend there were no tombs over there, and just after the Japanese retreat out of Taiwan, then they just recovered the tomb into a mound. But so far, up to now, there's still no tombstone in that place. Yeah, and the right side you can see many elementary school students, they will come to worship the primitive ancestor just on sweeping, what is that? Two sweeping festival, yeah. And I'll go back. And besides, I'll also introduce about the village's public cemetery. The public cemetery is located in a southern village, and only the villagers can be buried in the public cemetery. So it's different location from the primitive ancestors' tomb. And here you can see it looks very simple, not decorative, not decorated splendidly. Yeah. Okay, last I'll now make some brief introduction about village's modern development. As Eric and Mayev mentioned about, most villagers are engaged in fish farming, and in other words, these villagers, they make their living by the weather. So in recent years, the annual public revenue has gradually decreased, and the population has also flowed out. And so some villagers, they try hard to improve this situation, and their most important goals are to activate the village's economy, develop the community's property, attract the population to flow backwards, and keep the village's talent. For example, in recent years, the villagers' voluntary service group as human resources has been formed, and also a community center and a learning community school and a digital opportunity center has also been established to supply inhabitants with a lot of learning opportunities. And besides, as Maya mentioned about the villagers, they also start to sell the mullet rolls and other products on behalf of the village's specialty. And the purpose is to promote the image and activate the economy of this village. So that's the main idea. And because in the past, the village is very remote and very it's not developed, and with his few population and decreasing economic development, fewer and fewer people have ideas about this village. But in recent years, some villagers they do try hard to bring this village to the public. Okay, I hope you have the basic ideas about this village. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Questions, comments?